This is Xiaomi's Redmi 13, an affordable option if you're looking to save some cash. This is an entry-level device, but is it still decent, and how much value do you get here? I'm Will for GSM Arena, and let's find out in our Redmi 13 review. The Redmi 13 is going for around $180 at the time of review, and its feature set is missing a lot of the trends you see on phones these days. For example, you don't get an OLED display, stereo speakers, fast charging, or 5G connectivity here. It might be worth considering for someone who just needs to meet the basics, or as a second phone. And the Redmi 13 does have one claim to fame: it's the first in its series to pack a 108-megapixel main camera. Rather than the plastic you usually get on budget devices, the back of the Redmi 13 is glass. There is a plastic frame though. Overall, the design is pretty standard, nothing too exciting. But there is ingress protection on the Redmi 13, rated at IP53. Like last year's model, the Redmi 13 has a large 6.79-inch LCD display with a 1080p resolution and 90Hz refresh rate. Unfortunately, the brightness of this panel is disappointing. We maxed out at around 340 nits with a manual slider, which could boost up to just 450 nits in auto mode when exposed to bright light. That isn't adequate for use outdoors on a sunny day, and sometimes hardly enough for comfortable indoor use. The screen is easy to catch reflections, and without the proper brightness it's hard to overcome that. Otherwise, the display is sharp enough and looks okay. Of course, the bezels are large, as expected at this price, and there's no support for HDR video. At least the 90Hz refresh rate helps smooth out your swiping and scrolling. It's adaptive too, and can dial down to as low as 36Hz when you stop interacting with the screen to save energy. Just like last year, the Redmi 13 has just a single speaker for audio. The loudness is just average, and the sound quality isn't great either. Mids are a bit muddy, and the sound distorts at high volume. The Redmi 13 does have a 3.5mm jack too, if you'd rather plug in headphones. You can wake up and unlock the phone using the side-mounted fingerprint reader built into the power button. It's quite reliable. And the Redmi 13 comes with either 128 or 256 gigs of storage on board, and that's expandable via microSD. The interface of the Redmi 13 is Xiaomi's latest HyperOS based on Android 14. It's similar to what you'd get on any other new Xiaomi phone. If you'd like to learn more about HyperOS, you can check out our dedicated video. Xiaomi doesn't promise a specific timeline of software support for the Redmi 13. There's no beating around the bush here. Performance is an issue on this phone. Even when just going through some regular everyday tasks, you can get some slowdowns and stutters. The Redmi 13 does bring a different chipset than its predecessor. It's a relatively new MediaTek Helio G91 Ultra. There's not much Ultra about it though. Despite the refresh, this phone sits near the bottom of the charts when it comes to benchmark scores. The performance falls behind even the similarly priced competition. It's hardly adequate for a new phone in 2024, even a budget one. Plus, as I mentioned, this chipset doesn't support 5G connectivity either. You might think that with a weak chipset, the battery must last an extra long time. It's not quite the case though. The Redmi 13's battery capacity is about 5,000 mAh, and it was able to earn a decent but unimpressive active use score of 10 hours and 28 minutes in our battery life tests. At least the charging speed has been upgraded this year from 18 watts to 33, but you don't get a charger in the box in all markets. With a proper adapter, the Redmi 13 was able to go from 0 to 42% in half an hour, and a full charge took an hour and 17 minutes. And now the cameras. The Redmi 13 packs a high-res 108-megapixel main camera. But unlike the previous model, there's no ultra-wide cam, just a 2-megapixel macro camera. During the day, the main camera produces photos at 12 megapixels due to pixel binning. They're solid for a budget device. They have plenty of detail, though the level of added sharpening is a bit harsh. The dynamic range is good too, and so is the contrast. The Redmi 13 does a good job with human subjects as well. Skin tones and textures look realistic. There is a 3x zoom toggle, and these digital zoom photos look pretty decent. The main camera captures decent low-light photos, but nothing spectacular. There is enough detail, and darker areas are exposed well enough. However, there is a lot of softness, and light sources are almost always blown out. While the main cam does have a high resolution, the chipset limits the video recording to 1080p. The clips are decent. The colors are quite saturated, and there's aggressive sharpening. There's no electronic video stabilization here, so if you're moving, the results will be quite shaky. Let's see the close-ups taken with the 2-megapixel macro camera. The results are about what you'd expect at this low resolution. Finally, selfies from the 13-megapixel front-facing cam are surprisingly clean, with plenty of detail and nice colors, especially skin tones. The contrast and dynamic range are also good. So that's the Redmi 13. For the budget, you get a glass build with IP-rated ingress protection and a solid high-res main camera. However, there are a lot of downsides here, even compared to other entry-level devices with a similar price. The screen doesn't get very bright, you have a single speaker, and the battery life is nothing special. But the biggest shortcoming here is the chipset performance. The stuttering and lag are a constant and annoying issue. Because of this, it's hard to recommend the Redmi 13. Even if you're not after much feature-wise, a slow user experience is something that's tough to live with. Thanks for watching, guys. If you're looking for alternatives, you can check out our reviews of the Samsung Galaxy A25 and the Poco M6 Pro. Let us know what you think, and I'll see you on the next one.